Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the fascinating future of our food. We're going to explore the incredibly detailed, step-by-step scientific process of creating cultivated meat. And look, this isn't science fiction anymore. It's a rapidly approaching reality. We're going to break the whole thing down for you, from microscopic biology all the way up to full-scale lab-grown production.
So I want you to ask yourself a question. What if your meat didn't require a farm at all? Seriously. Imagine a revolutionary shift in food production, a world where the burger on your plate completely bypasses traditional agriculture. No massive pastures, no industrial feedlots, just pure, precise scientific synthesis. It's a pretty mind-bending concept, right? It literally redefines our entire relationship with food.
All right, so here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at why cultivate artificial meat. Second, the cellular starting line. Third, inside the bioreactor. Fourth, harvesting and structuring tissue. And finally, we'll wrap up with the future on your plate.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1. Why cultivate artificial meat? It's all about rethinking agriculture. You know, traditional agriculture carries a really heavy footprint. To put it into perspective, producing just a single pound of conventional beef can require over 1,000 gallons of water. That is a massive drain on resources. Cellular agriculture offers a radical alternative to that. By shifting production into modern lab facilities, we can dramatically reduce land and water use, cut down on greenhouse gas emissions, and completely remove the need to raise and slaughter livestock. Honestly, it's a huge win-win for both environmental sustainability and animal welfare. Moving right along to Section 2. The cellular starting line. Going from micro to macro. All right, so this is where we meet our tiny microscopic protagonists, the animal cells. These are your foundational biological building blocks. And the absolute coolest part about this, scientists extract these initial cells through a super simple, totally harmless biopsy from a healthy animal. That one tiny little sample holds the entire genetic blueprint required to create genuine meat. It's almost like magic, but it's just really good science. Now, once we actually have our cells, they can't just sit there. They need an environment to thrive in. Enter the growth media. This is a nutrient-rich solution where those extracted cells are placed to feed and multiply. It's actually a lot like planting a tiny seed in incredibly fertile soil. The media gives the cells all the amino acids, vitamins, and carbohydrates they need to kickstart their natural biological growth.
Next up is Section 3, inside the bioreactor. It's time for scaling up production.
Okay, so picture this. Those multiplying cells get moved out of their little petri dishes and transferred into these massive, highly specialized incubators called bioreactors. Inside these tanks, the temperature is perfectly regulated to mimic an animal's exact body heat, and the cells are getting a continuous, automated supply of that growth media we just talked about. Meanwhile, scientists are constantly monitoring all these molecular processes to make absolutely sure everything is developing perfectly. Millions. Literally millions upon millions. Through the power of exponential multiplication, that single extracted cell we started with divides into millions of new cells inside the bioreactor. As long as they have that continuous flow of nutrients, this microscopic starting line rapidly expands, eventually converting those tiny biological blocks into a massive volume of actual usable meat tissue.
Let's move to Section 4, harvesting and structuring tissue, essentially building the bite. Now, what's really interesting about this phase is how it all comes together. We've walked through cell extraction, placing them in growth media, and that crazy bioreactor proliferation phase. But the fourth step, tissue harvesting, is where the real magic of texture happens. The cells are actually encouraged to differentiate into muscle and fat. Scientists often use an edible scaffolding to help them weave together, forming structured tissue that mirrors the exact bite, chew, and mouthfeel you'd expect from conventional meat.
At this stage, scientists harvest this structured tissue to prepare the final product samples. And the result is absolutely incredible. We're talking about something that looks, cooks, and tastes exactly like traditional meat. It has the same proteins, the same fats, and the exact same nutritional profile. The whole shebang is synthesized perfectly without ever needing a farm.
And that brings us to Section 5, the future on your plate. Let's wrap this up.
As the quote says, cultivated synthesis really is the future of laboratory meat production. When you look at the environmental sustainability, the massive animal welfare benefits, and the sheer scalability of the process, it all points to one undeniable fact. This isn't just some quirky science experiment anymore. It is a highly structured, totally viable blueprint for the next era of global food production.
So I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on. How will lab-grown meat change your grocery shopping habits? I mean, think about it. When you can walk into a store and buy a steak that is biologically identical to conventional meat, but entirely free from the environmental and ethical baggage of traditional agriculture, will you make the switch? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.